do the pruning and all the manual work around here, right?
Oh yes, of course. I like gardening.
You climb the trees too?
Pardon me?
Climb the trees?
Of course I climb the trees. I'm not that old. I climb the trees and hopefully I wouldn't fall down like my grandfather did, which I was named after him. I'm Yitzchak ben God. And God was named, because of my father, his name is God, and my grandfather's name is Yitzchak. So God ben Yitzchak, and I'm Yitzchak ben God, because I was named right after my grandfather. He fell off a tree. When you ask me about a tree, so...
That's good.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
I'm still alive.
Yeah. The date is March 23rd, 1995. The survivor is Ed Lefkowitz, and the interviewer is Marvin Greenberg. The language is English, and this is tape number 1. Today is March 23rd, 1995. My name is Marvin Greenberg, and I will be interviewing the survivor, Mr. Ed Lefkowitz, who's sitting by my side. Good morning, Mr. Lefkowitz.
Good morning.
Tell us where you were born and when you were born.
I was born February the 9th, 1920, in the city of Lodz, Poland. Lodz was the second largest city in Poland, behind Warsaw, with a population of about 250,000. We had schools and shuls and shtibels and organizations, Zionist organization and socialist organization, of course, and always even the communists, Jewish communists. I belong to the Beitar, which is a right-wing Zionist organization, militant, that's what we taught. And I was going to a private school on Solna Street in Lodz till about the 4th grade, and then I went into the public school. At the Hebrew school, we learned, of course, Hebrew, and all the Rashi and all about the Torah and everything. And the public school, and also in the evening, the afternoon, we also learned languages, of course, Polish and German. And I was growing up among our peers. We had the school, even the public schools, because of so many children of Jewish faith, we had boys and girls' schools separate in public schools. My father had a furniture factory, upholstery, and mother had a wig factory. Most of our women, Hasidic women, who used to wear wigs. And this was going on. We had life just like any other teenager before the war, which I was a teenager until the war. And life was going on with libraries and movies and theaters, as I said before, and life was everything good.
Was the public school, integrated Gentile and Jews?
No, as I said before, we had Jewish public schools for boys separate and girls separate, Jewish public schools. We played football, what they call soccer here, and we had problems with the Christian population, or boys, let's say, or whatever. And anti-Semitism was always growing, but we got used to them.
What was it like?
Pardon me?
How was it shown?
It was shown at, let's say, by yelling at Jews, the Zhidi and this and that, and sometimes beating occurs. Of course, if we were there more than them, they would run away. And if we felt weak, we had to run away. But most of the time we had problems when schools played football or soccer, and if we won, our school won, we always get out ahead of time in order not to confront them. So life was going on. It was nice. It was a nice Jewish life. Holidays, everybody in the synagogue, especially in the high holidays, and we were a little bit already more modern. We didn't have to go to the shul every time just because of tradition, so we went alone. We were 7 kids until the war, because my youngest sister was born just before the war started in 1939. And we had, since the from the oldest one, Abraham, I was Isaac, Jacob, Rachel, Leah, and then Chaim, Michal, and then Eli and Miriam, the last one. And of course, from the whole family, what's left right now is only the 2 brothers. The third one died just recently.
You mentioned the name of the Hebrew school you went to before public school.
Yes.
How do you spell that?
Edelstein. Edelstein's private school. It was like a Talmud Torah, but they teach you secular and, of course, religious. Next door we had, next house was a real yeshiva, Machzik Das, but we were more modern. They were teaching us from Hebrew, as I said, to Rashi and Gemara and all that thing. They were teaching
You mentioned the name that the Gentiles called you. What was that name?
Żyd. Żyd means in Polish, Jew.
Oh, okay.
Same as the Russian call him Yevrei, or in French, Juif. So, but it's a name which even the government uses the name of Żyd, Żydowski, the Jewish. It's not like a cursed name, or they didn't call you over here a different name, or Kaik or whatever. But it's a name which even in Polish government they called you either Wyznanie Mojżeszowego. It means that we are a religion of Moses, which was a nice way to put it. But the rest of them, we didn't care too much. We got used to it. You're getting used to everything. It means you persecution, so who is stronger? It's not openly that you have to be afraid of them. Because when it came, let's say on a Saturday, we closed the shops. On a Sunday, the government closed the shops, because for 2 days we were out of school. It's only 5 days of school. The merchants usually, some of them usually were selling the goods, food most of the time, on Sunday in the back door. It was illegal, but that's the way life was there in Europe at that time. And we got used to it up until the war.
Did the Jews live in separate sections of the city? Or?
Most of the time, yes, because in the outlying, the Poles, Christians, where the center of the city, where the Jews lived. In the outlying areas, mostly the Christians or the Christian workers. We had, let's say, industrialists who had big factories, like Asher Cohen. He had a factory where I would say about 10,000 people, workers, worked over there. We had Asher Cohen and I.K. Poznansky, also the same thing, in textile, 2 textile factories. Cohen had like a whole city, his, because the houses belonged to him, the stores belonged to them, and people who worked over there bought everything what they need in his stores. And the same with the Poznansky. They still, after the war, as I came there, still the factories were still there. The government took over, and I don't think anybody left from from their relatives to take over whatever it is, but it was tremendous. And mostly Jews were, either they were textile factory, they have textile machines, hand-made machines, or big factories, and also a lot of German industrialists were there. We had shuls, which were all Orthodox except one. They call it a Deutsche Schule. It was a reform for the Jewish industrialists who came by car or by limousine to say the prayer on Saturday or Sunday. Friday and Saturday. German industrialists. Also, whoever felt that he feels better going over there. And there was quiet always there, and only you could hear only the cantor singing. It was different than the United States when everybody sings along and whatever it is. So we had two kinds, Reform and Orthodox. There was nothing like we are conservative, which we only found out.
And the workers in these textile plants, were they mostly Jewish or mixed?
Most of the textile plants were Christians. The overseers or the management was Jewish. We had also workers, poor workers too, in our city. They worked for themselves or worked for somebody, and in smaller plants or in the industry of that. Like for my father, we had people working, so we had some Jews and some of the Christians working doing the furniture, upholstery, most of the upholstery. The girls, the girls were all Jewish. So it was mixed. We hired them, and not only because they were trying to get a cheaper work, but we hired them because they were good at it. It didn't matter what. But mostly Jewish, they inspired, they wanted to be something better, and either they opened up their own if they could, or if not, they worked in the management or even as workers in the factories.
You were saying that the factories had homes for the workers?
Yes, it was like he built the homes, that Mr. Cohen built the homes and where they lived, and they paid him rent. He built homes, not homes actually, apartment houses.
And were they integrated? I mean, Jews and Gentiles?
No. Most of them, Jews didn't live where the Gentiles lived. It's something different. We lived in apartment houses, mostly in the central area of the city, thousands of them, even outlying going towards the small villages or city out of town. We had streetcars and out-of-town trains like also. So the markets, of course, stores, most of them. The people lived in houses with courtyards where if you lived in a house, you only had to go into the courtyard through the front gate. Outside the houses were stores. Unlike over here, they have to be, stores were separate and not together with the people who lived. But in our houses, in the front, on the street, were the stores, fruit stores or food stores and watchmakers and all the stores. And inside, into the courtyard, you go up there, depends how big the houses were. We lived in an apartment house. We had about 5 stories high, and there was about 2 or 4 apartments per floor. And everybody knew everybody. Most of the city didn't have any water in the plumbing. You had to go, the outhouse was outside in the courtyard, and of course a pump, you pump by hand, you pump the water, whatever you needed for the house, and you brought it in a pail up and into the apartment. And lately already we had started having it in Midtown, the more wealthier people were getting the plumbing and all that thing, what they needed.
But where you lived, you used wells?
Yeah.
Well water?
Well water.
And you had outhouses?
Every house had a well, a pump, like either pumped or brought it up. Like in the villages, they still were bringing up by a pail with a with either a chain or whatever. They put it, turn it down, and brought it up, the water, whatever you need. It was called good water. Good water. We did not pollute it.
So you lived in the center of the city?
We lived in the center of the city because 1 block away was the Platz Wolności, the Freedom Plaza, and we had the Kosciuszko's, what do you call it, his statue. So when the Germans came in, we had to tear it down. And we lived 1 block away from there. As a matter of fact, next door to us was the City Hall. So when the Germans marched in, we could hear every step, what they're walking over there, the soldiers walking in there, I could hear them. And life was just like anybody else's. I mean, we lived through without even people thinking of going. If somebody had a relative in the United States, maybe we're trying. I think my father, as I remember, was trying to bring us to the United States because there were hard times in 1929 when the United States had had problems, or economical problems. We had to start having the same thing. We lost some of the business, so we're trying to get over here. But until you turn around, the war started. It was '39, and I was I was working with my father. We went to Gdynia, in a port, a Polish port, to open up our upholstery factory. I and my father and I actually, and my older brother worked the shirt factory, and the younger brother Jack was coming out of school, and mother was busy with the kids. So at that time, when the Germans came in, I started working. Just before that, I started working in a dry goods store as a salesman. And this was going on for just a few months or whatever, maybe a year or so. And then when the war came, the Germans walked in, and we had to give them the keys of the business.
Before that, what was the social life like? Did they have dances regularly?
Oh yeah, we had a deptak, they call it. A deptak, it means we walk. It means about 2 or 3 blocks on the main street, Piotrkowska ulica, Piotrkowska street. There were teenagers like us walking back and forth. That's what the social thing. Then we used to go for dances. There were dances, getting together. Some, if you're a little older, or 18, 19, you were going already to a cafe with the dances and concerts. And we had concerts, but I remember a concert of Kusevitsky's, the brothers Kusevitsky's, Moshe and David Kusevitsky, which wound up over here. I remember the theaters, the greatest American actors, Maurice Schwartz and the Adlers, performing over there. We had very much, every time we had a show, a performance of some caliber of them, it was always full. Standing in line, there was no such a thing, an empty seat to have in the Jewish theater. We have Jewish theaters. And then we had the park where also concerts where they're coming in, and then after the concert we used to go to the other park next to it, connected, and I used to sing. I used to have those years a nice voice, and I used to repeat all the songs what the Cantor Kusevitsky or anybody else sang, arias in the opera, and I tried to imitate them. We had a nice life getting together.
The government of the city, what was that like? Did the Jews participate in the government?
Yes, we had some people in the government, in city government, because of the amount of Jews. About 30% of the population in the city were Jews, and I would say close to that were the Germans, the rest of them Poles. So we had a part in the city government. We had to be over there because of the population. And life was nice. I mean, let's say it comes before Passover. So you, as an Orthodox, you have to have kosher. If you didn't have extra set, mostly they didn't have an extra set of dishes. So we had a couple of people going around with a drum on the on two pieces on two boards on the side on their backs, on the shoulders actually, and coming in with water, and underneath that drum was fire. They lit the fire. It was hot water boiling all the time. So people, they came into the courtyards and calling out, "Kalim Tzikasherin," that the things is to be kashered, whatever you want to kosher. So you come down with it, with the plates and everything, and they dip it in the hot water. That means it gets kosher. And the spoons, the silverware, were on a string where you lower it into that, and you take it out and you rinse it off with cold water, and that's it. We always left because the hot water was brown, dark brown from all dipping and all that thing. And we had, and then we had people going around the backyards, magicians, sword swallowers, fire eaters, and all that thing, just to beg for they should throw down some money, whatever they do. And some magicians were good. Some singers, violinists that were going around, they panessa. We had also beggars. And the beggars, it was already a trade. They could borrow for money, of course, children, crying children. They were holding them on their hand, and they, all the time, if they needed them, you just pinch them, they should start crying, so get more money. This was a trade already. We had thousands of people going from business to business, and lately, they used to get from a business a coupon, so they shouldn't come around the next time around the block. So they had a coupon for next week, so they were getting regularly. We had that's our, life in pre-war lodge, like I believe in most of the big cities, unlike the little villages have different. But in big cities it was a trade. We had almozippers. It means sleeve pullers. A sleeve puller means if somebody comes from out of town, like the Galicians from Galicia, and they came to buy some dry goods or anything, ready-made stuff. So they call them sleeve pullers. They went over to them, pulled their sleeve. "Mister, do you need something?" So they brought them in to a factory or whatever, the store, and held out their hand, with the whole hand. It means 5% for me. They should know it. This was their business. I mean, people live from that to get the 5% by bringing in the customers. We had the papirosnik, with people who were making cigarettes from tobacco, whatever, and they were selling them. Of course, it was illegal because the government had the monopoly. You could buy schnapps illegally. You could buy, there was a bourgeois. People were standing at certain corners and they were trading money. I mean, any money you got dollars or yen or anything what you got, and they'll trade it. They had going according what they knew exactly how much how much it's worth it, how much it cost, and what they charged plus whatever they took off theirs. So we had everything and everything what you needed, and life was Jewish life because the Christians respected the Jewish holidays because they wouldn't get any more business too much, because if they had any business along the Jewish businesses, they had to close it because they wouldn't get any business on Shabbos. So most of the time, but lately we're getting a little bit freer. So they opened up. We had automats already where you get the Coca-Cola or whatever, there was dark liquid or whatever coming out, automated when you put in a few coins. And more than often the machine didn't work, so we waited with glasses, to put underneath, because it kept on coming until the managers kept coming out and stopping the whole thing. We had already hot dogs and sauerkraut standing, it's getting to be American style, that thing. We got the different food already with Greek restaurants and no Chinese. But most of the restaurants were Jewish. You didn't have to ask, is it kosher or not? We didn't have. Either it's Jewish, it means kosher or not. And if somebody wants to get some kolbasa, Christian kolbasa, and most of the time the boys were going on Yom Kippur when they get hungry. So they used to run over there and get, we used to have a joke about it, that the people, the butcher, he said, when is the holiday when the Jews can eat pork? So we had those things when we were growing up.
Did you all vote?
Yes, we voted. I don't even remember voting, because I don't remember if we were eligible to vote, because I was still a teenager. And I don't think,
vote?
Oh yes, they were voting, yes. Especially when it came around, we had all a kind of socialistic organization and used to come in and promise you everything. This I remember. The Bund or the socialists, they used to come in to vote for their party to the government. So they used to ask, so what do you need? They said, I need everything. So he said, Moshe, write down, he wants to have 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms. What else do you need? I need a horse, a carriage. What do you need? A car? Write down. So we used to joke about it, write it down. So he used to take those things.
So they did vote for the local elections and the national elections?
Yes, national election, because it was presidential election. They were voting for it, of course. And local election, which mostly the local election. But to tell you the truth, as children, we were not interested too much in government. We had our life. Everybody had their life, the social life, libraries. Libraries were always full, they're packed. Whatever book we had, in any language we had, because we all used Yiddish, Polish, German, everybody.
Were they public libraries or Jewish libraries?
Actually, it's not a public library, like Borochov, Bund, everybody, most of the organizations had libraries. We had school libraries, we had public libraries, but attended mostly by organizations, socialist organizations or the other, whoever had nice library. It didn't matter who, because they always had the same books, most of them. And we had also books, American books, in Polish or in German. It didn't matter with us, because we always liked to read a book written in original language, which sometimes if you read Shalom Aleichem in English or Shalom Aleichem in Yiddish, you could see a difference, because you cannot translate the same thing as whatever we read. If we read in languages, most of us knew about 3 or 4 languages, at least, everybody, because of as born Jews, and living in Poland, the second language was German or French. So everybody, it was something that no matter what language you start with, the other one would answer.
The survivor is Ed Lefkowitz. The interviewer is Marvin Greenberg, and this is tape number 2. What happened when the war started?
It was 1939. Our family was away, as most of the summers we were going out to the country. And coming back, we had to come early because Mom had a baby, the youngest one, Miriam. And it was when we came back and we read in the paper and heard on the radio that the war broke out and everybody was supposed to come and join the army should come over to a certain place. I was 19 years old. My older brother Abe was 21. And father was about 50 or 51. So we, all the three of us, eligible. Or supposed to be. So I only went with my older brother Abe. And coming over there, nobody was there.
Where?
Outside. The police was gone. It was after the 1st of September. The police was gone. Everybody was gone.
From where?
From the city. Everybody disappeared. I mean, no policemen, no, we didn't see any soldiers because they were all on the front. I don't know, somehow I and my brother started marching. I don't know why. To this day, I would never understand why we went just going north to another city or towards Warsaw or whatever. And we walked about 30 miles to a city named Brzezin.
You and your brother and your father?
Me and my brother only. Father stayed home with the rest of the family. And on the way over there to that city, we wanted to go to Warsaw. I don't know why. They start saying that they're going to take the younger people of the age of the military age. They would take them in camps or something like that. And we listened to those things and we decided to walk. We walked for about 30 miles and we met the Polish army going nowhere. All of a sudden, we heard an airplane, or airplanes actually coming, and we lay down with them, with the soldiers over there together, a lot of civilians walking with them, nobody knew where to go, and looked up to the sky, and we see the bombs dropping, and I was thinking, how do I feel being killed by a bomb? And after they passed, and it was not far where they dropped it, because they saw they were dropping on the military, they were dropping on the trucks and all the thing, on the horses, whatever, the cavalry. There was somebody said to us, "Are you Jews?" I said, "Yes." "What are you doing here?" "Was a soldier, a Jewish soldier in the army." "What are you doing with us? Why don't you go home?" "I have to, I cannot run away. I wear a uniform." And they explained, "Go back home." So we started walking back home, and they were bringing in already by a horse and wagon dead people who were killed. And for the first time, I went to that hospital, Poznański Hospital, and we looked in through a little window, and we saw, the first time in my life, I saw dead people laying on the floor, bleeding and everything, but dead.
That was my first.
That's in Lodz.
Oh, in Lodz. Okay.
In Lodz. We went back.
Yeah.
We went back. We walked back. And it started that you couldn't go out after 7 o'clock. And we had to bring in the radios. We had to bring in, of course, guns had to be given to the Germans. And as a threat that they are going to be shot, that everybody has to bring in the radios, the guns, and all the things what they wanted. They were posted on the street what to do, and not to go out, and ration cards to have, and all that thing. And I remember, because we had a larger family, we had three or four of us, we're going standing in line for bread. And it got bad, very bad.
When you started walking from Lodz toward Warsaw, the Germans were not in Lodz.
No, we're not. They came in about the 8th. Around a week later, they came into our city. This war started the 1st, but it took them time to get to Lodz. They didn't bomb Lodz. Lodz was I don't know, maybe because of that many Germans were there, and they left all the factories, everything was intact. So after a while, the Germans, we were waiting in the city about the 8 or something, and they were coming in on motorcycle ones. I believe since then, it frightened me, motorcycle. It's subconsciously coming to me, you know, that the Germans are coming in, or they're sitting, or like a cop on a motorcycle. It's still frightened me. It's left from that. It's a delayed reaction, but still, I got it. They were coming in, and all of a sudden we see Germans, Volksdeutsche, with armbands that they are the Deutsche, and they're the militia. They do whatever they want. So I went to work when they opened up the shop back. I went to work in the dry goods store, and the same day the agents of theirs, they came in and they said, I want to know how much you have from each piece of dry goods, the price of it. And after we worked, all the people who worked there, about 7 or 8 people in that store, they came in and took the keys with the list of everything what's in there. They didn't ask the questions. If you open your mouth, you get beaten up. On the streets, the young soldiers, about 17, 18 German soldiers, started roaming the streets, and with scissors in the hand. And the Jews, most of the Jews, almost 90% of the Jews, Orthodox Jews, had beards. And they used to cut the beards off with their scissors, pieces of skin. Once they told us, I heard commotions on Balutsky Rynek. This is about, I would say, about a mile away from us. This is a hub where the out-of-town streetcars were gathering, that they are hanging people. So everybody is running over there, and we see a scaffold over there, and either 3 or 4 people were hanging with a sign that they were black marketeers. That's the first time I see people hanging. We walked home, of course, jittery, crying, and it was going another few weeks or so. I don't know what we had to do over there at that time, and everybody started bringing in some news of what they're going to do. And so it was around, and food was getting very scarce. Baby, a little baby, she needed only nursing, but we needed milk, we needed bread, we needed 7 in the family now, plus our grandmother, Hanna Wolbowski, and all of us in the house without any work. The banks were closed. Whoever had the money in the banks, we didn't get them. So whatever you had in the house, this is it. So I don't know why it prompted us to go, either the fright of being caught by the Germans or sent someplace, or to relieve the family of 2 mouths to feed. But meanwhile, every time I went out from our backyard, the front gate, there were always soldiers because they were next door of us. I was caught, the same as my father or my brothers, caught, thrown into a truck and taken to work. That's what they did, is taken to work. If they needed somebody, just they went out with a truck, and whoever they grabbed on the street, they brought it in. And most of the time, a few times I was taken to the same hospital in a cesspool, to clean the cesspool, with my hands, of course. Once I fell in, I was beaten up, crazy, beaten up, bloody beaten up, for falling in there and not to be able to clean it out or empty it out in time. And this was all feces from German soldiers and officers who came from the war over there. So once I came home, father was home bleeding from all over. They caught him outside, and they took him to take apart Kosciuszko's statue, and they were beating not only him, they were beating him terribly. So I and my brother Abe again, we said around New Year's of 1940, let's get out of here. So as I said, I don't know what prompted us to do it. I don't know. We just took off. And also a couple of our friends, and we took a droshky. It means this is a horse-driven carriage with the top down, because we had to take off the marking. As we are Jews, we were Jews, we had to have yellow markings on the sleeve. And we went into the droshky, and we said goodbye to the parents. I remember they gave me $10, 10 zlotys, and my brother also 10 zlotys. We shouldn't have taken it. But we went out and jumped into the droshky with our friends, and I saw my brother, Jack, who recently died, walking home, which I didn't say goodbye to him. We came to the train depot, German soldiers, officers, beating, hitting everybody, trying to get on the train. We got on the train. It was late at night already. We got on the train. On the way where? I don't know. Out of the city to Warsaw, maybe to Gdynia. I knew we had our uncles in the United States. Maybe we'll get out. Maybe we'll be able to help. Who knew what's going to happen? We didn't know, because my father cried, said, don't go. I was with the Germans together, working for them in World War I, so don't go. It wouldn't last more than 3-4 weeks. That's it. We didn't listen. I was in a revolt. I had to go. My brother went along, my older brother. We came to the border. At that time, Russia divided Poland, about in the middle of Poland. The eastern Poland was divided, and Lodz came under German protectorate. That is within Germany, and they started calling it Litzmannstadt. So we came to the nearest, came to Warsaw, and there was an uncle living there, and there also were problems over there, and somehow we got out. We slept overnight, and the next morning we went further to another train, loaded on the train. Didn't buy tickets. You were running the trains on top of the train, the side of the train, wherever you could get a place. And we came to a border, Malkinia. And over there were thousands and hundreds of thousands of people running from the cities, from the villages, running away, where we don't know. So they said, let's go over here. At least they don't kill us. Let's go to the Russian side. So there was a neutral zone between the two borders. So when we stopped at the first border, the German border, the Poles were passing through without anything. They were bringing food for sale for the people who were waiting to let them in on the other side. And we were standing and waiting in line, I would say about 1,000 people at that time. And we just happened to be in the front, in the first row. And the officer, I didn't stop. I just went through because I looked Christian. Blue eyes, blonde, and I was garbed with the high boots and everything, and I went through. And when I looked back, I saw they caught my brother. He's standing on the side, and my friends, and another few of them, are standing on the side, taken out of the group. So I turned around to go back to them. So the officer saw me going back, so he gave me a kick in the side. He almost broke my ribs because I was playing the role of a Christian, a farmer. Anyway, I came back and I stood next to them. They marched that group into the school. That was a schoolyard, in a schoolhouse. And they marched them into the schoolhouse, and I didn't see him anymore. All of a sudden, somebody comes out and said, asked, who is a cabinet maker or anything you can know about wood or whatever. I said, I do. So he took us to the train station to take apart a bombarded house. Late at night, when we finished, the group came back and they gave me a piece of paper. It says on it that worked good. They should let me go through without anything. So I went into the school and I asked them, where are the Jews who were taken in the daytime before? So they said, oh, Restradari. We haben den erschossen. We shot him. I didn't believe them, but I went through on the neutral zone over there and started screaming, calling the name of my brother Abe or Mietek or the others, the friends. I found one friend who went with them. He told me that my brother and him, they got beaten up, they ran out of the school, and my brother said to him, told him that he's going back home. As a matter of fact, he went back home into the ghetto. He's still alive, he lives in the city, he's still alive, and he's alive because he was in the ghetto in all the years. And when they left, I'm jumping ahead of time, when they left, all the Jews were taken out of the Lodz ghetto. It was 1944. They left 800 people to clean the ghetto, Jews. Those 800 people didn't know that they were a big grave, a big hole on the cemetery for them, because after they finish, they're going to do that. So he got out and marched with the 800. That's why he was alive with that. Anyway, to proceed, what we did at that time, I went into the neutral zone over there, and they let us in to go to Bialystok. That's the first city where people were gathering who were running away. They called us bieżenci. It means people who are running away. People who were sitting in the streets, living in the streets, the houses of worship, any place where public places were full of people laying on the floor, families, the lice, people sick, thousands of people standing in line for a piece of bread over there. So my friend said to me, we found another one, and over there, who also escaped over there with us, but he's also alive. He said his brother-in-law is working as a tailor in Bialystok. So we slept over there, and with one of them, I went, and we decided to go to a different city, because my friend said, Schwinkelstein, he said that he has friends in Grodno, a different town in Grodno, and maybe they can help him more. So we went on a train. On top of the train, I remember we used to see films about riding on a train in Russia. On top of the train, we were sitting actually on top of the train because there was no room. People were hanging with one foot standing on the steps. We came over there hungry. We didn't eat a couple of days. And I remember, like today, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, we came into Grodno. And we went into the station and sitting down, hungry, no money. All of a sudden, a man comes over and asks us, are you hungry? He said, we Jews. I said, of course. He took us over there to not a restaurant, whatever it was open, a window like, and gave us tea and gave us a couple of rolls. We thanked him, and I'll never forget it. Later in the day, he went out.
Jewish man?
Of course. Later on, he came out to the city and brought me to a family that I should stay there, and I slept over there. And then my friend found his friends on the other street, on Dominikanska Street. And those were very used to be very rich people, but in their homes were already Russian officers staying with them, because they had a lot of rooms over there. And it passed by a few weeks, and I was trying to get back. I have to go back to the neutral zone. When my friends told me that my brother went back, I asked a peasant over there who came with food if I can go back with him, with my friend. So I sat down, and we came back to the German border. The German looked at me and passed me, and then he looked in the back and see my friend, dark-haired and everything. So he said, "You're lousy Jews, you go back." He wouldn't let us go back. I was trying to get back. Then when we were already in Grodno, there was a registration of all the people who were living before or would like to change places. It means the Ukrainians from Poland could go to Russia, or the Belarusians, or whoever lived on the Polish side or now Germany. There was an exchange. I registered. A lot of people registered to go back because they saw what's going on, because people start coming back who were sent to Siberia, or they were sent to the coal mines, and after a day's work they had to stay in line for a piece of bread, so they started coming back. They wanted to go back to Germany. They didn't know what's going to happen. I registered, and about a week later, it was middle April, about 17 or 18 of April in 1940, the officers who I knew from my friend's house, one of them comes in, calls me out. Lefkowitz, he said, "Собирай со вещами." It means take your stuff, whatever you have, and come along with me. It was across the street. I lived across the street from a jail. They took me into jail. It was the first time in my life I ever seen a jail. And I went inside. They took everything away, and I had to bend down to look inside if I have anything hidden. And we went into a room in a cell, laying on the floor. A cell for about 19, 20 people. We were 40. And we had the commanders, political from Bund, from Socialist Party, different party, doctors, lawyers, all arrested by the Russians. So I went in there, and there was a can, a toilet like, it's a big can standing in the corner. And everybody was walking in. I remember I walked over, I had to relieve myself, and I couldn't. Like everybody was looking at me. The first time in a jail, the first time shaving the head, and nothing on me, just whatever I had, a shirt and everything, laying on the floor, and I was crying. And I remember little things like there was a man, a doctor, who had a lot of food with him. He brought a lot of food. He used to live there when they arrested him, and wouldn't give anybody any food. So we had a few people, non-Jews, who stole his food at night. And the next day, they got belly aches, and they started crying, and they had to run to the toilet. And the toilet was a big tube outside the cell with about 6 seats around. And he had to help them because they were fainting. The doctor had to help those people who stole his food because they came in over there and stole his food, or cigarettes like that. He gave us paper, and the paper used for making cigarettes, koroshka they call it. We used to make cigarettes out of pieces of newspaper. That's what in Russian they do. Newspaper, and they put in a little bit of tobacco, a special made tobacco for that. And we had to give him pieces of our to use for the toilet, piece of shirt or anything. But we preferred to have a paper, because whoever smoked, whoever didn't smoke, at that time I smoked, we gave away for that. We gave away the bread for it. 6 weeks interrogation, every night taking us out. The first night, you are a spy, you came over here. I said, my God, I'm not a spy. We came over here because they let us in, because I was running away from the Germans. Why am I imprisoned? What, do you want me to sign anything? You're not a Russian. He told me I'm not a Russian citizen, that I refused to take the Russian citizenship. So I said, I wanted to go back. I registered to go back. I'm a spy here and there, and walking back. Every time somebody heard walking over there, they hit me, and I had to stay into the wall not to see who was passing me. So every night going like that, taking pictures, and I must have looked like a murderer in the middle of the night to wake up and to have those things. Beatings, unbelievable beatings from the same people who I knew before, for nothing. Just if I don't walk straight, or I don't walk enough, or I don't walk fast enough. 6 weeks later, they open up the door, call my name, Собирайся с вещами. It means take your stuff, whatever you have, in a little sack. And I walked out, and I've seen the people around me in 6 weeks. A lot of them lost their hair, and they looked awful. Like people who are just, they're going to die soon. They open up a door in the dark, and they throw us into a truck, one on top of the other one. They closed the door, and I knew the city. According to what they made the turns, I said to them, we're going toward the train. I think they're going to throw us over to the German side, finished. Comes to the train, we went on the train, and the train was standing 3 days without any food or water. That was the Russians. Then the train started, they threw in some filled mildew bread to divide in each wagon. I was a small little fellow, so they put me up on top where the baggage is on top. And after a day or so, we came to a next city, Baranovich, and then they had the rails. The rails are wider in Russia than these. We had to get out from the rails, from the train, and sit down while they were preparing us to take us to the other one. And all of a sudden it started hail and rain, and we're sitting on the ground. And the soldiers are standing with the bayonets watching us. We shouldn't get up. The hail was big pieces ice. I had my coat on my head. And after that, they marched us over to the wagons. They marched us over to the wagons, take off everything. They looked us again at if we don't have anything hidden. We did it in the jail and into the wagons. Once we're in the wagons, the door opens up, and the officer asked me, do you understand in Russian? Понимаешь по-русски? So I said, da. Languages, even though Polish is different than Russian, but languages are caught on right away. So he said, you are responsible for the people not to look out the wagon. If I'm going to shoot you. I said, I didn't say that. You are responsible for it. So went in there. We were 60 people in it. 15 on top. There was on the side, a shelf like 15 and 15, and on the other side 15 and 15, and a toilet in the middle, and this is it. Closing the door, I opened my eyes. I came out with a ball from the cell. I fainted. When I opened my eyes, my friend picked me up. One of my friends picked me up and set me down, and they started bringing the food. Some bread, he said, please give me a piece of extra bread. I said, how can I give you extra? They're pieces of bread, cut. Whatever's left over, little things, you can pick it up. And we were traveling like that for 6 weeks until we got to a city called Cutlass. And over there we got out of the trains in big tents. I couldn't get into a tent over there. Snow was on the ground already. And the lice
is Ed Lefkowitz. The interviewer is Marvin Greenberg, and this is tape number 3. You were saying about the train having arrived at Cutlass. How do you spell that?
Cutlass, K-O-T-L-A-S. Over there was a camp with tents where the lice were as big as flies. Then we had to stand in line for bread. The bread was a mixture of straw, was dark, anything but it was bread. And we had to stay in line, thousands of people. And I developed dysentery. I was so sick, I couldn't stand on my feet. So when I came to the place to get the bread, and it was hot bread, I was burning my fingers straight out of the oven, I said to myself, if I eat this, it's either I die or it will help me. And I ate up the whole bread. Bread was about a kilo, 2 pounds at one time. That was the whole thing, everything, that's all the food you got. And then we had to march down a few stories down to Severnaya Dvina, Northern Dvina, D-Z-W-I-N-E, A-N-I. And over there the barges were standing waiting for us. Every barge had about 2,000 people in it. We're sitting in there are no toilets, everything was wherever you sit. People who did anything, I remember I asked if I could go outside once to stretch. So I went out and there were sitting a few people with chained, I don't know what they did, but the soldiers chained them. Then people started, the second and third day, people started dying. And I don't know what happened. They must have thrown them overboard. Until we got into Uchta, U-C-H-T-A. And over there was a transfer point where by the ABC, mine was the Lefkowitz, so I was the L and M, were in the same camp. And my friend Tenser was with another camp. There are so many camps every 2 or 3 miles, every mile or whatever. They had camps over there in Siberia. We were about 1,500 miles south of the North Pole, and the same amount of miles, I believe, from Leningrad, which was to the east.
West.
Or to the west, rather. I was sent to Uchta Izemlag. The camp had producing heavy water. So the first day they put us on, all of us, opening up trenches. But the earth is always frozen to about 6 feet, always frozen. In order to soften up the ground, we had to make a fire over there. A lot of wood, chop the wood, put the wood on, and after a few hours, we started digging. So we didn't have to have side moldings like wood to hold the sides because everything was frozen. But I remember once they didn't notice it was a steam pipe going through there, and all we heard was a scream, and that's it. It covered up one of my friends, and he died at that time. After a while, the next day, coming out, doing the same thing, a man came over to me. I found out he was Jewish. And he asked me if I would like to learn a trade. So I said, of course, out of the trenches. He took me over and gave me a hammer and a chisel if I could, well, he was holding actually his chisel in hand and gave me a big heavy hammer to hit the chisel on raw steel. And I did it. I must have closed my eyes. I don't know. I was lucky. So he said, okay. He taught me how to work on the netting, steel netting, which goes into concrete. And I started getting better food. It means a little bit of soup, a extra piece of bread. And this was going on for weeks and weeks. It was a camp in which, if you get out of the camp with soldiers going behind you, and you worked outside to build the houses for the soldiers or for the guard over there. My master, who I worked with, was a Kazakh. He was about 6'5". He was in for killing about 5 people or whatever. But he was nice to me. He was nice to me. He taught me everything. I was a little fellow, a young fellow. He was nice to me and helped me quite a bit. Once he hit me only because somebody stole a piece of bread, so he hit me. He thought I did it. He apologized. But in the camp, every day going out over there, even 50 below zero, we going out to work. There's no such a thing. I remember my fingers and my toes were all split, oozing. They never healed. Food was bad. Once I heard singing in the restaurant, or in the room where we were getting our food. So I went in there and I had a voice, and I asked them if I can sing with them. And there were great singers from the Moscow Opera. They must have said something bad about Stalin, but they sent them to Siberia over there, and they were working in offices mostly. So they took me in, and I started getting better food, much better food. It means I could sit down at the table rather than standing in the line with a dirty little can to get the food, whatever's left over, like ukha. What they take is a spoiled fish, throw it in the kettle with hot water, and cook it with the bones and everything. That's called ukha. And that's what we ate. And if you bite in a bone, you're in trouble. So at that time, we got the better one. It means they took the fish out or whatever, they threw a sift or whatever, and got better food since I started. But all in all, I was very sick most of the time, very sick, until about 2 years. After 2 years, they must have signed they signed something with the government, new Polish government, that they should let us out, the former Polish people, means Jews, Polacks, whoever. They let us out, they should be able to go south to the warmer climate. We got out at that time, went on, and put us on a train, and I came to a city, Syktyvkar, which is the main city in Komi SSR, Komi SSR. And I went there, and we didn't have any money. So whoever was with me, my friends, I said, we don't have any money, nothing, whatever we have, we got in the camp. I mean, the Vorlikis. It means made out of warm material. The shoes or the boots, and we had the cotton quilted jacket and pants. And we came over there to the Syktyvkar. I started working in order to make some money to be able to go south. Started working, and all of a sudden, winter starts very early over there. It's only about 10 months a year, the winter. The ground is frozen, and during the 2 months, or 2.5 months, everything what's growing is growing day and night, because it's grayish, day and night. The nights are gray, light. So you're working around the clock, whatever you can. And I remember we came to the city and I started working, and the war started with the Finns. And you didn't see any man at all. Any man at all. Just the women took over their jobs, and whoever came out of the camps had to do, if they knew a specialty. So they asked somebody. I was working with a horse and a sled, bringing in food for a restaurant over there. So on the way to the restaurant, I used to cut off pieces of meat, whatever it was on it, and ate it raw. I mean, this was something nice. All of a sudden, I heard they were looking for a mechanic. I said, listen, I wasn't a camp, a mechanic over there, and I counted myself as a mechanic already. They need somebody to take care of the kettles, which were producing steam, to steam the skis made for the Russian army fighting the Finns. So I went in there and I had problems over there because I didn't know. So I had to go to the library and I read about that kettle. The kettle was burned and somebody was arrested. They said that Vreditelstvo, that he did it because he wanted the Finns to win. Anyway, that they against the revolution, so somebody was arrested for it. But they came to me. You said, the mechanic, fix it. So I went to the library, worked at the library a whole night, I read it until I knew it by heart, came back next day and I fixed it, whatever it took it apart. Then I met my wife over there. She was working in bringing in the wood from the sawmill. And we met. She didn't even know that I'm Polish. She thought I'm a Polak, Christian Polak. And we started talking. I spoke a perfect Russian, and found out that she is from a city, Alexandrov, which is 9 kilometers from Lodz. And about 2 months or 3 months later, we got married because we figured out whatever she'll make for us, she was with her brother at that time as a family, whatever she'll cook, it'll be better for us. With the 3 people bringing in, everybody brings in something. Like I used to make, somebody needs a key, I used to make up a key made out of tin or whatever, and I got a piece of bread for it. I brewed the bread. My brother-in-law was a mechanic. He did something else. What do you call it? To make a fire.
Igniter?
Igniter. He was making them, so he got some potatoes or whatever. That's the way we lived until 1944. It means 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. It's 5 years. They signed again with the Polish government that we should go south. This time, it's going to be the right way. I mean, they take us to the trains, and it was the summertime, and we going by train. After about 2 days, we passing Moscow. We never saw Moscow. So I said to my brother-in-law, let's see Moscow. We're free people now. We're not going right with the soldiers, everything. And meanwhile, the war with the Russians, with the Germans are going on. So the military with the trains, military trains are going back and forth. And Moscow, there must be about 20 rail tracks over there. You don't know where and when. All right, in Moscow we're getting off because we didn't know how long they're going to stay there. So I took my brother-in-law and we took the underground over there, which is both beautiful, and we came into Moscow, turned around an hour or so, and we're going back. Coming back to the station, the echelon is gone. My wife, my child, the child was born, my daughter Rose, which hopefully you're going to see her later. She was born May the 2nd, 1944. And she was about 3 months old when we went south. They shipped us south. Anyway, we're coming back to the station, and there's no echelon. We don't know where they are. You can ask. If not, they say we're spies. Everything is military. So I asked a man over there, they're standing, he said, where is this? But I heard them say that they're going south. But where south, I don't know. So I asked a man over there, not a soldier, and I asked him, where is this train going? So he said, it's going to Kursk, south. So I said to him, let's go. We went on the train, and it was a cover, and underneath they had all the tanks, whatever, underneath there. And we were hidden over there. The next day, we came to Kursk. And you wouldn't believe it. We walked about 15, 20 minutes. We found the train with my wife and my child. We were happy. Of course, she was yelling, screaming at us why we left her and all that thing. The baby was sick, dysentery. There was a woman was along. She was a doctor, a Russian doctor, but she married one of us. She had a right to go out. She could have got out of Russia. So I remember she had some sulfur powder, and she gave the baby. And we came to Ukraine, to Kherson. And Kherson, the name is Kherson. It's spelled Cherson on the black, on the Dnieper, near the Black Sea. And a man came out. I didn't know he was Jewish. A man came out looking over the merchandise. Everybody's coming out of their trains. He needs the Germans just left. Everything was bombed. Nothing left on the fields. Just a little bit of whatever they have left, and they ran out in a hurry. But they bombed all the equipment, farm equipment. They bombed it. So so he came over. Who is a mechanic? So I'm a mechanic. My brother's a mechanic. There are not a few people mechanics. The rest of them are going in the fields to cut by hand, by hand, whatever that's left over. And he brought that man. It was the председатель. It was the manager of that farm, which was unlike it was a sovkhoz. It means a government farm, rather than the other farms which were owned by the workers, owned. Everything they had to give the government anyway. So he brought from his farm, he brought apricots, peaches, grapes. We didn't see for 5 years of fruit. Nothing grows in Siberia. So I ate, I remember I couldn't push in anymore anything. I thought I'm going to die. It must have been about 25 pounds of grapes I put in. They took us over there and we started working on the machines. We did the machines well. My daughter was getting food better, but we didn't have any money. All they did is give us food. And all of a sudden we said, okay, there's a lot of things being over there that we went, I had to go down to the river, which was frozen. It was at the sovkhoz. And I had to march down about, I would say, 10-story down to the river. It was frozen, but it was already about March. And I wanted to pick up some growth which growing into the water. You cut them off, and then you bring them in the house, and you can burn them, use as fuel. I remember I had already made a bundle and tied it, and all of a sudden I must have stepped on something which the lake was going one into the other, and I found myself under the ice with but just the head sticking out and holding on to the bundle. So little by little I got myself out, and it was cold. Everything was frozen as soon as I came out of the lake. So I started running up to 10 stories high at the top of the hill where we were staying, and I came in over there, took off my clothes and everything, jumped in the bed. I didn't even sneeze. I was healthy. Everything, food was there. I mean, so after a while, we decided to go to the city, Kherson. In Kherson, we worked as a mechanic. I worked again making buttons out of pieces of hide or leather. It was a stem like. And I was also fixing primus. A primus is a little, not an oven, where you have kerosene, a kerosene lamp like. You pump it up, That's the way everybody had this. Or you have an oven where you have to put those things in to burn wood. You didn't have any wood. Everything was growing over there, but the Germans they killed everything over there. You know, whatever they took out, the same as the Russians retreated and the Germans took over in 1941 or whatever at that time, or 42, when they were approaching, when they were winning the war against the Russians, going towards Stalingrad. So what we did at that time, we tried to get there, and we worked over there until it came time. They said that we have to go, we can go back. Meanwhile, I wrote a letter. They said that Lodz is being freed already. So I wrote a letter to the city hall to find out about my family. I was away in Kherson, which is 25 kilometers away, to pick up a package which I got from Israel. They sent a package from Israel. An uncle of my wife found out where we are, and I got a package. I don't know, I don't remember how and where, but when I picked that package in post office, I walked home. On the way, the truck was coming from the Sovkhoz, and they said, listen, you have a letter from Poland. So with that package, I ran 15 kilometers, ran home to the farm over there, and they gave me a letter, and the letter it says, listing all my family, nobody left. That's what they wrote, that nobody is left over there. So I walked back, and what's the use of going back? And if they asked me to stay there, what's the use of going? But I still didn't believe it. Maybe. There was always a maybe. You know, the Jews, when they were killed at the ravines in the last minute, they always, in the last second, they thought, maybe there would be a change of heart and they wouldn't kill us. We always live with that maybe. We believe in God. Ani ma'amin, we believe. We took the kid, we walked, actually walked 50, 100 miles with trains. We got to Poland. We went to Lodz. I was so famished that, and I was born in Lodz, instead of going to our street, I went to a different street to look for, they said there's a Jewish committee there where I can find out. Then going with my brother-in-law and noticing I made a mistake, we went back where there's a Jewish committee, and thousands of people are coming back from Russia already. You could see people, women pregnant, took other husbands while those husbands alive and met him. It was unbelievable sight. Just an unbelievable sight to see people which you knew all your life, and they changed. They're all of a sudden, a boy of 16 looks like a man of 30. No hair, no nothing. It's an unbelievable sight. We went there, and I found out that one brother, I went to the house actually where the janitor, Polak, recognized me and said, "You still alive?" Everybody is dead. "You're still alive?" So I said, "Yes, I came back from Russia." So where I said, "Is your son," which spoke Yiddish just as me, he lived together with us. He was a maven, even an achazan. He was a maven. So he told me he went with the Volksdeutsch. It means everybody who knew how to speak German or Yiddish, the Germans took him to the Volksdeutsch. Anyway, he told me that my brother is alive. I didn't know about the other brother.
The janitor told you that.
The janitor told me. Then this is the house where we used to live before. Then I went to the latest house, and they told me there's another brother, also came back from a camp, from Auschwitz. Where are they? They left for Germany. I went up to the committee, which was an illegal committee, and I told them that I belonged to the Beitar before the war, and they said, "Okay, take this address." This is an illegal thing. Nobody should know that they are there, and we are preparing an echelon to go to Germany and then to Israel. So
what was the approximate date of this?
This was 1946 early. 1946. After all we went through over there, we came to Germany. First of all, on the border, German and Poland, the train was stopped by the Polish government, by the Polish soldiers. They wouldn't let us through, and we were traveling as former Germans going to Germany, and they would recognize some people speaking, listening to them. They speak Russian. They didn't want to let us through. Eventually, the Bricha, which was part of the Israeli emissaries, Israeli soldiers, or whatever, they must have paid off the people, and the train went through in the English zone in Germany. And then I left my wife in a town named Kassel, Kassel. And by the way, when I came into this camp, they made me, I don't know why, they made me the chief of police, where they were bringing in some thieves or people who were crossing the border. But I left it over there because I was looking for my brothers. I knew already where they are, in Backnang, B-A-C-K-N-A-N-G, near Stuttgart, and south of Germany. So I went by train, and I came to the town of Backnang, and my brothers were gone already to the United States. I registered already over there. I came back and brought my wife into the camp over there. It's a DP, displaced persons camp, and I registered to go to see my brothers because they went on a visa on the first ship. I even remember the name of their ship. Their ship was Marine Fletcher. That was sailed in June of, I believe, of 1946. That's their ship. I came to the United States in 1949, March the 23rd, by General Muir. That's the name of the ship. Coming to the United States.
What did you do in those few years?
And in Germany, we were in Germany in camp. We had to wait. During that time, I was busy working in the management of, and I even have somewhere a card with my name and a picture working as an official in the camp in Germany. Helping the others, also giving them, distributing food and anything which came, talasim, which came from the United States. The Joint Distribution Committee started giving us all this thing. And my daughter, of course, was growing up over there. She was already 44, about 5 years old. And I was never in touch with my brothers. They didn't know where I am because I couldn't send them anything about my being there because I was not a Polish, I was a German Jew. I mean, until I got out in the legal way to the United States. But while being there, I couldn't do anything because we went through a lot of things. There are so many things I went through going all those camps, which would take hours and hours if you're going to start talking about. But even coming to the United States is a chapter for itself. It was a camp, it was a German school, a seminar. This happened to be, we were 500 people over there in that camp. Life was that you get up in the morning and had to go to the restaurant over there. There they give you food. We cooked over there. We had a cook. In the beginning, I was the head chef. I didn't have to cook, but I made a menu and told them what to cook. And in the kettles, it was like in the army, big kettles to cook, pressure cookers like. And I had to go take the truck twice a week, and I went to Stuttgart. It was about 30 kilometers away, to pick up the meat. Of course, it was kosher meat, because at that time the rabbinate was there, the American Army was there in the kosher meat to pick up, and I also used to pick up some liver, because I had a friend, very sick friend, which is now in Canada, Meltzer his name, and he had tuberculosis. They wouldn't let him come into the United States or to Canada. And I used to bring the liver especially for him. I brought back the meat, we cooked the meat, we cooked the food. I was dispensing chocolate, bar of soap, whatever we got from the Joint Distribution Committee. Then they started coming in used clothes. And we brought in the people one at a time, and they put on a coat just to their size, and we gave it to them. We got in the talasim, to fill him, you know. We got in, the Joint helped us a lot. We used to go out also on the farms to the Germans. And they had the farms, in order to bring in, you took the same thing as happened before. I mean, the other side, they were on the other side, on the giving side. It means that I could bring some clothing to them, and they could give me some food growing at their farms. They used to take a bicycle and go into the farm for a few kilometers away and go to the farm. And talking to them, I had mixed feelings. Those are the people who killed my family. I didn't know exactly what happened to my family because my brothers were already in the United States. But whatever I heard, they were the one who killed. I didn't know about crematoria. I know one thing, where they were shooting and killing people, gassing people in the trucks. Little bits and pieces what we heard people saying. In talking to them, they didn't say anything about it. Nobody knew anything. Nobody knew anything. They wouldn't believe it that happened like that. That they were killing people. Everybody knew. They got all. You could see rabbinic coats with the fur. You could see Jewish pochene koldere, they call it. It means down cover, made out. The Germans never had it. Everything Jewish. I bought from them the down cover. As a matter of fact, I still have one. And my kids are calling it the pochene koldere. It means the down cover, made from down, or a pillow. All of a sudden, they have amnesia. Nobody knows anything what happened. But I couldn't say for sure and blame everybody. Hate, yes, in the beginning everybody was hated. But as Israel started, the same thing. Later on, it was in 48, when Israel started doing business with them and everything, and they started bringing in cars from Germany to Israel, it eased up a little bit, because after all, you cannot condemn a whole nation for the sins of their fathers, for the sins of whatever they did, the soldiers or whatever. So life over there with the Germans was just as to go through the day. because most of the time I was reading about people who are looking for people, for their relatives. And I worked in the office, and I used to get a list about once or twice a week. As a matter of fact, I found a brother of my sister-in-law's, which is in Israel. I found him because I sent them a letter to the United States later, and I told them, and I wrote to them that they're looking for Puttermilch. That's his last name, Puttermilch, which is also my sister-in-law's last name. And he lives in Haifa, and that's where she met him. Life was something that everybody was trying to get into a different camp, and every time we met new people, as a matter of fact, when they started liquidating the camps and brought in new camps, everybody was standing in the street and looking at the faces. If we can recognize anybody, and as a matter of fact, people recognize some relatives, cousins, or even somebody from the next town or from the next street, which I recognized also. As a matter of fact, when I was in the United States, I recognized a friend, which we were together in Grodno, and after 45 years, they still live here. After 45 years, we recognized each other by the eyes. Our life as Holocaust survivors is we still believe, no matter how many times we're getting together at meetings in Washington, Israel, or Miami, we're going around looking at the people and looking for a miracle. Maybe somebody is left. They didn't want to do it, or somehow they couldn't get in touch with anybody. Maybe. We still live. I still live with the thought of what happened before. Because when I came back and when I met my brothers and they started telling me what happened in the ghetto where they lived, what I found out in Lodz Ghetto. Of course, there was a Rumkowski. He was the king of the ghetto. And he was, when the Germans came and asked him to give up the children to be sent away, they told him that that the children will be just sent to out of the country or to Germany or whatever, but they'll be alive. Meanwhile, we're taking the kids to kill. My father actually, rather, and my younger brother died of starvation in the ghetto. My father is named Gödel. He worked as an upholsterer, because everybody usually worked whatever they did before the war for the Germans. And whatever they produced, they got food. They brought it into the ghetto. The ghetto was about with 200,000 people, and little by little they started sending away people by train, and letters came back. Oh, we have good jobs. They were told to write letters. They were going to get good jobs and everything. People were going voluntarily. My father died. My younger brother, Chaim, he died of starvation and also of tuberculosis. My grandmother died in 1943, the same year as my father, lived in our house. By the way, everybody had to leave the midtown where we used to live and go into the ghetto, which was a few square miles, and every family got a room, one room. I found out about it from my brothers, what they told me. My mother was hidden with two little children. One was already about 4 to 5 years old, the youngest, which was born in the beginning of the war. And the other one was about 8 or 9 years old. And she was hiding them out in the houses which were already empty. So my brothers, two brothers, my older brother and my younger brother, they worked at a train depot. They had friends in the police, and they told them which street was empty already. So they were hiding Mom. When there was no child in the ghetto anymore, Mom was still with there, and they were helping. The two brothers were helping her. All of a sudden, it was 1944. As I said, no child over there. My brother is unloading a train with food. He sees Mom. My older sister was about close to 19. Mom with the two kids being led by the police to the train. So he didn't wait on anything. He just left whatever he had to do over there and joined Mother with the kids to be with them. Maybe they need help. So as soon as they got together, right away Mengele came out, Dr. Mengele, the doctor of death, and made a right and left, my sister to the women, the older sister, my brother to the side with the men, Mom with the two kids into the showers where they were gassed. Horrible death. My brother Jack told me also, we found out later, that my youngest, the sister, Rose, was taken to Stuttgart to a ship. And as the Russians were approaching, they put the girls, there were 19,000 girls on that ship. And they wouldn't like to have, the Germans didn't want anybody to witness that they had taken the whale. They wanted to ship them to Sweden to keep them over there for work or whatever they wanted to use them for. And as the Russians approached too near, they put bombs, and most of the 19,000 girls died on the ship not far from the shore. There's a woman, a cousin, who was taken together with my sister, but she was in the upper deck. She jumped in and she swam, and she's still alive over here. That's why I knew about what happened to my sister.
You know the name of that ship?
No. I don't know the name because my brother, what I wanted to die, he died recently. I didn't know what.
How did you get to America?
But I want to finish with the what happened to Jack. Jack was taken to Auschwitz with a number. He was in Auschwitz for a short time, a few months, and they shipped him to Buchenwald. In Buchenwald, where he was working, he saw a piece of bread, and he must have taken the piece of bread. They hung him by his feet and beat his teeth, that he had marks on his back. This is the one who died. He never was able to speak to anybody in schools about what happened to Mom. He felt guilty. He should have gone, he said, over. As recently as about 2 months ago, I spoke to him. And he said he still feels guilty. He should have gone, when they took Mom to the showers, he should have gone with her. My life is not a life. That's what he said after so many years. Close to 50 years later, he still felt guilt. The same thing as I felt guilt, and I still feel guilt all my life for not staying with my parents. Why did I run away? And I keep on asking myself, why? Self-preservation? What did I want to accomplish? Why did I run and left my family? And I'll never forgive myself for it. Eventually he was freed because he was running. He's trying to hide himself as a Swede, as a Belgian. And as a Belgian, in a Belgian camp in Buchenwald, he changed his name. He said he's Van Leen instead of Lefkowitz. He didn't have to show anything because anyway, when he came to the United States, he changed his name to Leen, Jack Lean, what is named the United States. Whatever he told me at that time, what happened to the family, whatever happened to my brother who was left in, we were sitting for years, really years. Every time we got together, all we spoke is about family. One happened, one is blaming the other. They're blaming themselves. We all the years we lived with a feeling of guilt. Why didn't we stay with our parents? All right, father died of starvation, you couldn't help it. What with mom? What is to use to live? What is there used to live without the family? And we were a very close family. When I'm going to schools to teach about the Holocaust, I'm always telling them of my guilty feelings. And I'll never forget it. I always come out with it. I don't know why, but I always come out with it, that I'm guilty. And when I came to the United States, I was trying, I worked as a tailor in the beginning, for $5 a week, for nothing. Then they took me into a bakery to scrape pens in order to have food for my family. I had, unlike, I don't know how anybody else, but I had very hard in the beginning. And going to school at night in order to learn the language, whatever I did, I wanted to do the best way I can. And working the bakery, the other porters, they left, and I worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 35 cents an hour, and people were making money already. But I didn't mind as long as I went home and I brought a lot of bread and cake home. That was the most important thing. But the most important was my family. My daughter was born in 1951, the other daughter. There's 7.5 years difference between one born in the Siberia and one over here. My first $5 I brought into a rabbi to teach them, to the Talmud Torah in the Bronx, to teach them Yiddishkeit. And I gave them the best education. Both college. Hunter College in New York, Sherry, when she was a high school, I brought her over to Florida. She went to Gainesville, became a lawyer. The older daughter, which you're going to see her later, Rose Rosencrantz, going every 2 years, leading. She was the national coordinator from New York of the March of the Living. And she's going every 2 years, but she would never allow me to go. It's not for you to go back to Poland. But she's taking it. She's doing it. She's the educating director of education in the Temple Bet David over here. Working with the Commission for Jewish Education, she going to the churches, to schools to talk about the Holocaust. And I'm very proud of my kids. What they're doing in my footsteps, I'm trying to do because I love doing what I'm doing, working for the people, working for the Holocaust survivors, which I'm the president for 13 years already. We started this club, we have about 300 people in our club, and that's what we're doing.
Would you like to show some pictures now?
Yes.
Okay.
The picture shows my grandparents, Hannah and Moshe Aaron Wolborski. This is my mother's maiden name. Hannah Wolborski died in the ghetto about 2 weeks after my father. And the picture was taken in the early 30s when Moshe Aaron was still alive. He lived in Skierniewicz. This is in between Lodz and Warsaw. It's a small town, Skierniewicz. He used to live there. He had was a tailor and then a small little town.
Thank you.
These are my parents, Godel and Shendel Lefkowitz. The first one is Avraham, my brother. I'm the second one, Yitzchak. And the third one is Jack, which Jack died about 2 weeks ago, in March the 8th. Then Rose, my daughter Rose, my sister Rose, which died on the bombed ship, and Eli, he was guest with mom. There were 2 more kids. This picture was taken in the early 30s, so the smallest kids are not on the picture.
Thank you.
This is a picture of my father's parents, Yitzhak and Mariam Lefkowitz, taken in the 20s in Skierniewicz also. It's a small town between Lodz and Warsaw.
Thank you.
This is a picture of my father before he got married. It's in the 20s,
And he,
I believe, or earlier. He was playing instruments, not as a musician. He played the violin and the flute in the piccolo. And it was taken also in Skierniewicz, where the family comes from. This is a picture of to the right of my parents in the 30s. And on the left side is my mother, Shandel, and my father sitting, Gödel. On the right side is my older brother, Abe, and I'm on the left side. This was taken in 1922 or 23. I was about 2 or 3 years old. This is my father. In World War I, the Germans had taken over and put him in a camp. You could see the garb, the long garments, and also the German commandant in World War I with his wife and another officer. This were taken in Skierniewicz, in a town between which it's a city between Lodz and Warsaw. This was in World War I. They were taking all the Jews into a camp. It was a working camp, but unlike the camps what they did in World War II.
Good.
This is a picture, a certificate in a DP camp in Germany, in Backnang, in 1947, 48. I worked as a camp officer or kitchen chef, as an officer in the camp.
Okay. Go ahead. You can.
This is my birth certificate after I came back from the Russian camp, and you see it, I took out a copy of my birth certificate, and it says Isaac Lefkowitz, I-Z-A-K-L-E-W-K-O-W-I-C-Z, Lefkowitz. I had to change to Lefkowitz because they spoke my name in the beginning. L-E-W is Lukowitz, and I wanted to have the sounding of Lefkowitz. I had to change to L-E-F in the United States.
Thank you.
My wife, this is my wife, Helen. We are married 52 years. This coming September 25th, 1995, will be 53 years married with the same woman.
We got married.
And what is she a survivor?
And she is also a survivor. We got married in Siberia in 1942, September the 25th.
And she will also be interviewed.
And she will be interviewed after me.
My brother married us.
Your brother married you?
My brother-in-law was the rabbi. He wrote a kesubah, and I'll never forgive him for it.
He's dead. Forgive him. He's dead already.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Just something else?
Finished.